We have such a great episode for listeners today. Imagine if you rolled together the expertise of your pediatrician and the real talk of your mom best friend, and then had them publish a book. That's the experience that you're getting today as we speak with Dr. Diane Arnaout, board-certified pediatrician, mom, and author of the just-published Hiccups, A Pediatrician Mom's Guide to Surviving Your First Year of Parenthood, available wherever you buy your books. One of the coolest things about this conversation is realizing that even your pediatrician experiences the ups and downs and anxieties of that first year of parenthood and lives to tell the tale. You are not alone in this. We're covering everything, from the most common questions that parents have, to how to think through the advice that you're seeing on social media, to how you should really be thinking about vaccines for your kids. This is Getting Started with Baby, the podcast that brings you practical tips, loved products, and lived experience from parents who've been there. Brought to you by thestarterset.com, a service focused on helping parents find just the right things at the right time, personalized for them. I'm your host, Jane Deshevsky, a mom on the other side of 2 under 2. I'm still actively figuring all this out, and I'm bringing you perspectives from across the parenting spectrum. By the way, if you like what you hear, leave us a review or follow the podcast to help us keep growing. Let's get into it. Welcome, Dr. Arnaout. It's such a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you, Jane. I'm so happy to be here.
So maybe to get started, could you tell us a little bit about your background and even your family as well?
Sure. My name is Diane Arnaout. I am a general pediatrician. I work in North Texas, and I've been in practice for about 15 years now. My hope for Hiccups is that it's a data-driven warm hug for parents, because remember those first days very fondly. In fact, I opened my book with those first days and the feelings I was having, so that people knew that even the professionals struggle. Even the professionals wonder if they've made the biggest mistake of their life those first few nights. You're not alone.
Yeah, I love that. And that's such a great perspective. And it feels like sometimes when you hear from authorities like pediatricians, that it comes from this place of authority. And this comes from such a place of empathy and real experience that it's the joy.
I tried. And I was joking earlier with you. I sometimes cringe to think about the advice I gave before I had kids. And I try to give myself a lot of grace there, but I give a lot of the same evidence-based information, but man, I deliver it differently. I have 2 kids now. They're 10 and 12. Those first few days, it was 12 years ago, but it really feels like it was yesterday.
So, we got into this a little bit, but, there's other parenting books out there. In your own words, what makes this one different?
There are fabulous parenting books out there, and they're so informative and they're so detailed. And there are fabulous parenting books by doctors, and there are fabulous parenting books by parents. What I hoped was that this book would sort of bridge the science and the human experience of having babies and dealing with all the challenges that come in the first year. I really tackle a lot of things in this book that has been controversial lately online. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but everything is controversial online now. Not just like the vaccine stuff, but how to feed your baby and sleep training and, approaching colic, approaching gas. But everyone has an opinion. Everyone has something to say about these things. So what I wanted to do was make a book that had hundreds of the most common questions I get as a pediatrician behind closed doors, very honest questions behind closed doors, and then just give the answers that I share with parents every day, along with a ton of information where they can go read more. When you go to the pediatrician, we try so hard to fit so much into a 20-minute visit with you, but I'm gonna be real, it's hard to cover everything. This book never will replace your doctor, but I want it to be there for you if you forgot to ask something or if you weren't able to get to something right away. The chances are great that the question you were wondering about is in the book.
It's funny because you mentioned as you were talking about this book that there is just so much information out there these days. I was talking to someone who's been helping parents for 20 years, and she was saying that that's a big difference she sees, that now there's so much information out there that it's feels like more pressure and there's the right way and a wrong way. What's your take on online information versus other sources and how parents, you're a parent yourself. How do you navigate that?
It's hard. And I've written this on my social media accounts too. It has never been this hard to be a parent before. There's so much information out there. It is so hard to know what's real and what's not. Everybody has an agenda. Everybody wants a voice in the social world. And so sometimes I feel like the loudest voices may not have the experience or the credentialing to back up those claims. And I just feel so bad for parents who are just trying to make the right decision about whatever decision they're trying to make. But when you've got people online telling you that if you don't do baby-led weaning, you're the worst parent on the planet, but where's the science? Where's the data? How can we help parents make these decisions with real data and numbers and information, you know? So that's where, I hope the book helps because, like I said, the social media world is so interesting to me and everyone wants to be relevant and everyone wants a voice. And so it's really hard to know who to trust. Also, you can totally cherry pick studies. I hope everyone hears this. So I write about this too. You can find a study to support anything. You can find a study to support that eating ham sandwiches will cause throat cancer. It's a silly example, but it illustrates correlation doesn't always mean causation. That's where I hope, and I see medical professionals and science professionals getting online more and more and talking about this and kind of letting their voices be heard too to help parents out.
So important because there's this, you see it in the marketing stuff too, right? All of these things as a parent, so emotional, you're in an emotional state, you want to be the best possible parent. It's playing on that desire, the fears, all of that.
But what's interesting is that if you read studies about who parents trust, whether it's influencers, the internet, Google, parents, friends, across the board, what I find comforting is that their own doctor is the person that they listen to the most. So that's the conversations that happen behind closed doors, where that box of Kleenex is. Those are the vital conversations.
I think for me, one of the things that was just such a light bulb moment about your book was that, oh man, pediatricians feel the early parenthood journey too. They're also going through it. So I'd love to talk about that. You open your book with your first days of parenthood, which was so relatable, at least to me. I had so many of those feelings that you talk about. But what shocked you the most when you became a parent? How was it different than what you thought going in?
I read so many books about kids and so many medical books about physiology and breastfeeding and formula feeding and nutrition and sleep. And then I had my first kid. So I had a C-section with my first kid. So we brought him home on night 3, and that was the night he decided to cluster feed. I didn't know I had read books about cluster feeding and about nursing and how you have to build up your supply in the first few days. It's nice to gloss over that and read it, but when you're living it in real life, you're not realizing, damn, my whole body hurts. My nipples are like roast beef right now. All this kid does is scream at me. If I put him on the boob, he falls asleep, and then I take him off, and then he screams at me, and rinse and repeat from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. And I was so flustered, as so many parents are, that first night at home. My entire abdomen had been sliced through a few days prior, so nothing was moving or working correctly. And so I opened the book with me sobbing in my driveway at 4 a.m, which I don't remember what I had for breakfast today, but I remember that so clearly because I felt like a failure. And because I didn't know what to do, and I had put him in his crib in his room. So I tell parents all the time, if you need a minute, if you're in it and you need a minute and your kid's been screaming at you for hours, that is the moment that you take them, you put them somewhere safe, like a crib, and you walk out and you take 5 minutes. And guess what? 5 minutes of crying never harmed a child or killed a child. My husband was somewhere sleeping, of course. That must be nice. And Jack, I could hear him screaming at me through the walls of my house. I was in the driveway and I looked up at the sky. It was 4 a.m, and I just said, how in the hell am I going to do this? I've made the biggest mistake of my life. This is so all encompassing. This is all I do now. Stick my boob in this kid's mouth and hope something magical happens. I don't even know if my milk's coming out. I ask moms all the time, is your milk in? Well, how the hell do you know if your milk's in? No one tells you.
I had that same question. I remember being on the phone with a pediatrician. I had a very similar experience, not crying in the driveway. I think it was in a closet. tell the pediatrician? They asked me that question. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah,
Right?
I think.
I mean, maybe. And then I slowly realized, well, they're starting to feel like a couple of bags of rocks, and they're leaking everywhere. I guess that means it's in. And it was amazing because when I wrote that, I was sitting in my bed with my laptop, and my kid was reading his book next to me. He was 11 at the time, and it just was like me. I just sat there and kind of stared into space. What a full circle moment. What an amazing 11 years this has been. And I remember that so clearly. And guess what? It gets so much better. And man, I really, really needed someone to tell me it was going to get better that night. I felt like, oh, well, I'm a pediatrician. I don't need any help here. And I should be ashamed for even thinking these thoughts. And, I wish I had this book. I wrote the book that I wish I had at those first few months because they were very hard for me. And I know it's very hard for lots of parents, not just moms, but dads too. It's a hard, hard time. There's going to be this magical moment where one Saturday morning, and it just creeps up slowly on you, one Saturday morning, they're going to figure out how to turn on the TV and how to pour a bowl of cereal, and you're going to get to sleep in. Now, it's going to be like 30 minutes and that's it. But man, when it creeped up on us, it was the coolest thing. Like, okay, we made it. We've survived.
So you talked about how hard it was and that you wrote this book that you wished you had. But when you were going through it, what actually helped you feel like things were going to be okay again?
So I really struggle. I struggle in general with anxiety, but it was obviously multiplied 20-fold in those first few months. The things that helped me, I'm not a person who tends to reach out for help. I think most of us a lot of women, especially women in the medical field, we're not used to doing that. And I remember my mom saying, oh, I would love to come stay with you for a week or two when you bring the baby home. And I was like, no, we need to, I use the word, we're going to establish ourselves as a family together. And then if I need your help, I'll let you know. Like, it was so adorable what I thought would happen and how it actually went down. And then after that night that I just cried, I called her the next morning. I mean, I said, Mommy, can you come help? And so being okay with that, it's okay to ask for help. And it's not in the way that you necessarily think. I didn't need anyone to hold my baby or feed my baby. I just needed someone to wipe down the countertops where all the breast milk had spilled. And I had my husband, and he was very helpful, but someone who had been through it, like my mom, it was so nice to have it. And she ran to the grocery store to get groceries for me, just asking for help. I also read about other women's experiences in places I hadn't read before because I was egotistical and a pediatrician. And so I got on forums and I got on these apps, and I finally was like, all right, I'm not alone. This stuff wasn't in medical school, that's for sure. This is the mom experience, and this is not something that I could learn about in a science environment. And so loved that, learned so much from it. Wish I had podcasts like this where I could sit and listen to other people's experiences more. But yeah, reach out to others, especially other parents, because they get it. And it's especially people who have been there recently, they totally get it.
Yeah. It's amazing how many people had every thought that you had, or some variation of it, or had a similar experience. It's really, having that support from other moms is so big. Yeah. So you mentioned that part of this book, you thought about the hundreds of most common questions you get from parents. So what are some of those common questions? What do you feel like parents ask about a lot?
Oh, it's funny. There's a chapter in this book that I love very much that everyone may kind of roll their eyes at, but I love it. And it's called The Top 10 Most Common Things I Get Asked About that I never thought I'd get asked about so much. When we trust our medical professional, we know it's okay to ask even the silliest of questions. But I think there's just a lot of things that I think they need the human experience. You can read about colic on Google. You can read about reflux on Google. But until I think someone sits with you and says, oh my gosh, my kid barfed after every meal for like 6 months. Like, it's okay. This has happened to me too. People ask questions that they may be embarrassed to ask their friends or their family too. In that one chapter about the common things I get asked that I never thought I would, people ask about crunchy joints all the time. When you would pick up your baby and their shoulders would pop and crunch and their spine would crack? That's really scary to feel as a parent, but it's completely normal. People ask about snot color. They ask about poop smell. They ask about penis color. This stuff is not in a medical text, So I address all of that because I think it's important to know that everything's going to be okay. And Google may not have the most straightforward answer on it,
Oh, totally. Thinking of my own funny ones. Like after our first pediatrician visit, we had our baby in our car as we were coming back, and the alarm went off, and it was in our Tesla, and the Tesla alarm is very loud, heavy metal music. What happens? And our baby just slept through it, and we were testing her hearing for the rest of it. Our pediatrician was like, "They fluid in their ears, fine."
Yes. Not only that, they also sleep very deeply, like way deeper.
Yes,
sleep.
but you don't think that because you hear, the thing is like, oh, tiptoe around, like,
yeah.
noise.
I recommend the opposite for babies. Babies, we all tend to tiptoe around them and, let a sleeping baby lie. I'm not about it. I'm like, you got to get that baby used to daytime versus nighttime. Make all the noise within reason. Turn on that TV, run that vacuum. They're going to sleep through it if they need to because they sleep so much deeper than we do at that age. When I had my first baby, it seemed like every facet of my life wrapped around that baby and accommodated that baby. And I think success comes when you bring a baby home and make that baby kind of acclimate to your life. I think that's when you've made it as a parent. And it usually takes a kid or two for that to happen, right?
Yeah.
The first child, oh my gosh, we stayed home constantly. We never left the house. Every nap had to be in silence. I did all the things that everybody does with their first kid. That second kid, I mean, we were at the grocery store day 4. I didn't even have a baby bag. I had a diaper in one back pocket and some wipes in the other back pocket. I was like, come on, kid, we're rolling. I got a toddler. We got places to go. We got to go to the playground. It's just amazing the different approach, once you get more comfortable with it. So
yeah,
that's what's supposed to happen. Their baby is supposed to jump in on that train that is your life and just make it better, but also accommodate to everything that you do every day.
It's such a common experience too. I wish I had this too with my first kid. I was so type A, and no one was allowed to come near them because we didn't want them to get sick. And like the second one, we had a toddler in daycare, so that was out the window. And I mean, just all these other things that you're so much more relaxed about. And I wish you could give the second kid experience to the first time parents because it's
absolutely
so freeing. It's so much more freeing.
And I talk about it every day. That first visit with that second or third kid, those families walk in looking cool as cats. They're relaxed. They're so happy. And I always say, how's it going? How is this experience compared to the first? And everybody goes, even if the baby's more difficult or have a medical condition or what have you, it's that life change. It's that all-encompassing earth-shattering change that first kid gives you. Mm-hmm. I think that's what will never compare in subsequent kids,
Yeah.
That's the human experience. You got to go through it.
What are some of those common misconceptions or you've experienced?
Breastfeeding is a huge one. A lot of moms go in assuming that they will breastfeed exclusively. And I obviously love to support them in every way, but there's a lot of tears if it's not going the way they expect. If they're not enjoying it the way they expect, it may be successful. But I think it's okay to voice that some moms don't like breastfeeding, right? And I think it's okay to say some moms prefer to make a bottle of formula, and that's okay. Formula is not the F word. I gave my babies formula too. In fact, formula is fantastic nutrition for infants. Yesterday, I had a mom come in, and her 4-month-old had switched from breastfeeding to formula, and she spent like 9 minutes justifying to me why she made that change. I went back to work and it got really hard for me to find pumping time. I said, please stop. There's no need to justify. A fed baby is a healthy baby, and that's all that matters. Breastfeeding is huge. And again, you can drop all expectations, drop all the ego. I really get into it in the book. Like every baby's different. Their body is different. Your body is different. I had very large breasts when I was breastfeeding, and I really envied women who could be at the restaurant and pop that baby on the boob and have a quick little cover. That's great. I'm so glad that worked for them. It was like a 10-pound warthog was under there fighting me. Sweat was going everywhere. Milk was going everywhere. It never worked for me. So I just brought a bottle. That was okay. It's just such a different experience for every woman. And I really hope women give each other grace and understanding there that everyone's experience is different. Everyone's baby is different. And be patient with yourself. And you know what? If you got to whip out a can of formula, whip out a can of formula. It's fine. I have one exclusively breastfed kid, and I have another kid who had formula. And guess what? You could never tell the difference. My breastfed kid had more illnesses growing up than the formula kid ever did. And I go into this in the book too. I just hope people go into it knowing that it's okay to trip, it's okay to have hiccups, it's okay to tumble sometimes in these experiences. Breastfeeding is a common misconception. It's funny, approaching medicines like antibiotics and creams and more therapies. Some people go in thinking they'd be really shut down to all that, and then their child gets sick. And it's such a scary experience. They become more open to talking about that. I just say go in with the greatest of hopes and expectations, but also go in with a little humility and know, hey, it may not go that way, and that's okay. That's okay. As long as everybody comes out the other side healthy and happy.
I think you touched on this a little as you were answering, but there is something about, especially early parenting, where it feels like every decision is so important and such a reflection of you as a parent. And like, I will raise my hand. I was that mom who hated breastfeeding, hated it. And hearing what you say about formula is such a relief, because I definitely beat myself up about it the whole journey. And I remember my husband saying to me at some point, like a few months they're going to be eating real food. It doesn't matter that much. I didn't have that perspective. Hopefully someone has that perspective. And so hearing you say these things, it really makes such a difference, I think. And I wonder about some of those other things that you've seen parents come into your office. You have the box of tissues. What feels really important to a parent that you as a pediatrician feel like maybe they shouldn't be so worried?
Oh, that's a good question. I hear it all. I think any good pediatrician takes all worries very seriously and then tries to educate as much as we can. Breast milk versus formula. Okay, so I dive into the science of this. This is, quote unquote, controversial in the lactation world, but are the benefits of breastfeeding really that huge over formula? The long-term benefits, as well studied as we think they are? Or is your kid really going to have a higher IQ or get sick less if you breastfeed versus formula feed? In some cases, I do think that is supported, but in some cases not. So that's one topic I can think of that I'm like, okay, if you are crying for hours every day, if you are in pain, if your supply can't keep up, and you are thinking about getting a can of formula, that's okay. It's okay. It's not as, I know it feels so huge right now, but I always joke in a few years, they're going to be eating the fries off the floor of your car that have been there for 6 weeks. It's going to be okay. Some other things, sleep training. I like to talk about sleep a lot. It's almost like we are in this culture where in order to be a good parent, you have to suffer. I just feel like parents really suffer to meet the needs of their children. And to some extent, that's absolutely true. But I think learning about sleep and implementing good sleep hygiene can start at day one with babies. And there are so many good sort of strategies out there. And then there's this whole culture online of, well, if you do any of those things, if your child ever makes a peep while they sleep and you don't attend to it right away, like you're a bad parent. Well, no. And studies actually don't support that. They've done studies that watch children for 5 years after sleep training to see if there's any increased incidence of mental health disorders or attachment disorders, and there weren't. So it's this, and every parent can sort of choose how they want to approach that. But the worry is so huge there that I find myself reassuring a lot about that.
Don't this is one of them too, the crying, right? As a new parent, you're very attuned to crying. Somehow you always think it means they're hungry or some other thing. But how should parents think about crying and fussiness in those early days and how to react to it?
I gave this talk to a couple of new parents yesterday, because our baby was absolutely screaming during our whole visit together because my hands were cold and she was so warm and tucked into her snuggle before I took her out. Anyway, I looked them both in the eye and I said, crying is your baby's way of communicating with you. It's like they're talking to you. And I know it doesn't feel like they're talking, and their face is crunched up and they're turning purple and they look so upset. That was very stressful for me as a parent, by the way, because I'm very type A, very hypersensitive person. So that screaming grated at my soul, right?
Yeah.
But I always joke that if little babies twinkled like fairies, our species would have died out a long time ago. Crying is God or nature's way of you want that to stop. You want the sound to stop. So you tend to your child, to whatever they need. Thus, your child survives the propagation of the species, right? Crying is important. We've never evolved out of crying because we need it. And so I think I see a little sparkle in a parent's eye when I explain this to them. You're not the crappiest parent in the world. They all cry and they all need to, and we need that. It's not going to last forever. But in the beginning, that's just how they say, hey, like, this doesn't feel right. I need someone to come over here and snuggle me, or I'm hungry. It's time to feed me again, even though you just fed me an hour ago. It's just think of it more as talking, which is hard in the moment, but it kind of feels less scary. I also, in the book, dive into, boy, do babies have different personalities. If you go out with Betsy, who has the perfect kid who never makes a peep, and your child's the same age and is screaming during the whole lunch, guess what? You're both normal. They're both normal babies. They just have different personalities, and that's okay.
It's funny that you say this, because I think this is one thing that really drove me crazy about early parenting. And I mean, maybe that's because I'm used to being data-driven and there's an answer. But the truth is, a lot of babies are really different. Like, you have to try different things. To some people, that's comforting. Oh, all these differences, normal. To some people, that's, oh my God, what do I do? Everybody's different. I have no idea what the right answer is. So how do you navigate that?
Well, what I wanted to bring up too was that sometimes those different personalities appear in the same family. So kid number one was a chill little cucumber. You could do anything with him and he would be fine. It takes a lot of comforting and reassurance from me to explain that, hey, kid number two, who cries a little bit more and barfs a little bit more, and also doesn't like when pee-pee's in her diaper, that's okay too. That's a normal child as well. I think the beauty of being a pediatrician who has done this as long as I have is that you don't just get to know my two children. You get to know thousands of children. And with that experience brings a lot of comfort in that I can say, no, you're not alone. Like, I've seen this. Your baby's not even the fussiest baby I've seen today. I think I could just kind of see a little relief in their faces. Like, okay, we're not the worst parents. This is okay.
Yeah, it's funny because as a parent, you have a much more limited scope of what you see as normal. I remember even having the second one. I was like, oh, this is the developmental phase. I remember this. But when you're going through it, you're like, what's happening? I think you touched on this in a few different parts of this conversation. But there are a lot of controversies these days.
Yes.
And I do want to talk about them because you are a pediatrician and it's so important. Okay. One big one going on right now, certainly, vaccines. Yeah. Parents are hesitant about vaccines. What would you tell them?
Well, I mean, I have these conversations every day, even from people who maybe have had 2 or 3 kids. And now with the third kid, they've just heard so much stuff. They don't know what to believe. And it's the same vaccines that I gave their first child or second child. But now they don't know what to believe because there's a lot of mixed signals coming from governmental agencies. I think that's devastating for a parent to have to sort of pick and choose between a medical professional and a governing entity. That breaks my heart. The parents have to go through that every day and think through this every day. But when it comes to vaccination, I remind everybody, nothing major has changed in decades. This vaccine schedule, honestly, hasn't been really touched for a long time. These vaccines have been given to millions upon millions of children. And I'm not a fan of little tiny studies, but in my study of my practice, my one practice with its few thousand children, in 15 years, I have never seen a severe side effect with the vaccine. Again, let's go back to every decision in parenting is you weighing benefit versus risk. And I think the benefits of vaccination so far outweigh risk that it is a no-brainer for me. And I vaccinated my children without hesitation. I think that's my biggest argument, to be honest with you. My children, the 2 most precious things in my world, have gotten a flu shot every single year, have been vaccinated with every single vaccine that is recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics schedule. I did not think twice. There wasn't thinking twice. And the reason that I didn't hesitate is because of perspective. I have taken care of children who have died of preventable diseases. I know the movement now is to be natural, right? Like, we all want to be natural. We want more natural things for our children. We want to eat more natural stuff. We don't want to use medications as much. I'm here for it. Okay. But death and dying is also natural. Horrific disease is also natural. Haemophilus is natural. Whooping cough is natural. Polio is natural. And here we have these remarkably safe tools that we can use to prevent these things. I mean, if you hold a baby dying of whooping cough in your arms, it will change you on a cellular level as a human being, and you will fight until your dying days to make sure you can prevent that from happening to another kid. Because the internet, the social media stuff has made us fear the wrong thing. We fear the vaccination instead of the disease.
I mean, I really appreciate you sharing all of that because it's so
It is.
sobering. Even watching your child have a fever, I don't know, as a parent myself, even that makes me feel nervous and I don't want them going through it. And these things can be so serious. They can be life and death. And when you talk about parents weighing risks, right, that's the ultimate risk. What a horrible amount of suffering. So
Yes, it is. And I've seen it firsthand. And when you've heard a parent cry like that, you never want to hear that sound again in your life. And so I'll keep fighting the good fight for vaccination. I really will.
Yeah. And we need you doing it. So I appreciate that. As a parent, I appreciate it. Well, so switching tacks a little bit, we talked about all these decisions that can sometimes feel really important. And one that I'm curious about, we're sponsored by a service called the Starter Set, which helps parents try to make decisions about which products, especially in the beginning, are going to be useful for their family versus not, and kind of cut through that marketing noise that we're all facing and up against these days. So I'm super curious, as a mom yourself, as a pediatrician, are there things you think are truly just very helpful in those first weeks?
Oh, great question. I love a good swaddle. I will say that babies are very different in what they'll tolerate. But the nice thing is, in this day and age, there's big variety out there of swaddles that are safe and that have just sort of different amounts of give in there for the baby that really likes those hands near the face or likes those hands further down. Love a good swaddle. And it suppresses the startle reflex, which is kind of what wakes them up a lot. So we love that. They're the famous snoo. It doesn't work for every baby, but I think parents deserve good sleep. And I think that you feel so much more of a human when you get good sleep. So devices like that, which are safe, which involve a safe sleep environment, can be so helpful on the nights where you just need to get that extra 30 minutes of sleep, 40 minutes of sleep to make you more sane. I think a good digital thermometer is important. A good digital thermometer for rectal temperatures, which is the gold standard for infants. The bottle mixers and there's a lot of good technology around bottles these days. My sister recently had twins and I went to stay with her for a while. I was like, man, we've come a long way with these things. You put the powder in and you put the water in, and within 20, 30 seconds, you've got a warm bottle ready for you, as opposed to heating it and the shaking it and all that. But you got to be careful with those and watch recalls for those, because if you mix those incorrectly, they can actually harm a child. It's rare, but it can happen if they get too much water or too much concentrated formula in there. You kind of have to make sure you keep up with your recalls, but love those for the convenience factor. And then pillows, like breastfeeding pillows. I think we've come a long way there too. One thing that killed me in my breastfeeding journey, or whatever you want to call it, is back pain. A wonderful lactation consultant taught me, you bring the baby to your breast. You do not take your breast and bring it to the baby. I was like I was just doing this all the time, hunched over constantly. Everything hurt already after a C-section. And then I added horrific back pain and neck pain to that. A good nursing pillow, or even a formula feeding pillow, like a good pillow to prop them up to help with reflux, kind of prop them at 45 degrees, is fantastic and worth the money, I think. If you want to ask me what I don't think.
Oh, I will. That's next. But I do want to say about the breastfeeding pillow, because I think there's also, in addition to natural, there's a little bit of a minimalism trend, right? And so I think one thing that's funny about it is I remember looking at those and being like, oh, whatever, I can just use a regular pillow. But you spend so much of your early days feeding a child. Sometimes you feel like that's literally all you're doing anymore in life is just feeding.
Yeah.
And anything that makes that, like sleep, anything that makes feeding a little bit more comfortable is, I mean, I'm not a pediatrician, but as a mom, those are the things that are worth it.
I completely agree. Worth their weight in gold. And to shout out to the twin families, there are some fantastic twin pillows out there too, for tandem breastfeeding or tandem formula feeding.
What about things you think are not necessary that parents gravitate towards?
Okay. So this might be a little controversial to some people.
I'm here for it.
First of all, these are just little pet peeves, but the really complicated baby wearing apparatuses. Now, people are going to come for me for this, but they're just so daunting for parents. And I think they just sit in closets a lot and don't get used a lot because there's like 48 buckles. And I could not finagle my kids into half of these things. And I had 3 or 4 of them. And I found what was most lovely for me was like a belt loop flap. It's just a piece of cloth that had a belt loop on it. It was the simplest one I could find. And my baby loved it. She wanted to be held a lot. So at least I had my hands free, and my baby wore her all the time, loved it. And so I guess what I'm getting at is you don't have to buy the most expensive stinking baby wearing apparatus. You can really go, with the cheapest, easiest one. Just watch hips. They need to be bent to 90 degrees. So most of them these days are made that way anyway. But that was one. I didn't think you have to buy anything complicated for baby wearing. And then number 2, and a lot of parents aren't going to agree with me on this. We pediatricians kind of hate the owlets, like the vital sign monitors that people buy, because, and I think the technology has gotten better, but if your baby is sleeping on a firm mattress with no stuffed animals or blankets, not in your bed with you, and is in the most safe sleep environment that you can get them in, I just feel like those devices cause so much more stress than benefit. Now, this is not to include premature infants or babies with medical conditions. They absolutely have to be on pulse oximeters and stuff like that. This is just these run-of-the-mill sort of things that you strap to your baby's foot that just wake you up several times a night and drive you crazy.
If you could sit down with every parent the day they're bringing their baby home, what would you tell them?
Something as simple as, it's going to get better. It's going to get so much better. And this is not to say that every parent has negative experiences in those first days. Some people are such naturals. It just blows. I have a sweet girlfriend who, she was kind of like the party animal growing up, and she got pregnant with her first baby. I was like, girlfriend's going to hit a wall when this baby comes, and it's going to blow her mind. Man, she flowed into it so naturally. She just loved every second of those first few weeks. But that's not how it usually goes, right? The majority of parents that I see in those first few weeks are exhausted. They don't know what they're doing. They think they're doing everything wrong. They think their life is now just a cycle of constant diaper changes and feeds. They'll never get back to their hobbies. They'll never get back to their passions. And I'm here to say this is a little bump in the road. It gets so much better. I'm speaking as someone who writes books and plays the drums, and I'm a certified yoga instructor, and I'm a painter, and I read books. You get it all back. You get yourself back. It just takes a little time to get there.
I just want to thank you so much. Your perspective is so, so valuable. I think it's going to help so many parents. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a review or follow the podcast to stay up to date on new episodes. Know someone else who could use this episode? Please pass it on. Interested to hear more or get in touch with Dr. Arnaout? Follow her on Instagram at Dr. Diane Arnaout. And make sure to pick up a copy of Hiccups, available now wherever you buy your books. Check out the links in the episode description. Have topics you'd like us to cover? You can find us on Instagram at The Starter Set, or reach out via info@thestarterset.com. Thank you for listening. Till next time.